This tutorial will show you how to graph the Usain Bolt data from class and how to analyze it to create a position time graph and a velocity time graph. So I've already typed in data for 7 different sprinters, including Usain Bolt. I've copied some of it down below for Carl Lewis and Usain Bolt because we're going to analyze that later for our velocity time graph. But let's start by creating a position time graph. So I'm going to go to Insert tab and I'm going to insert a scatter plot. So in the middle here are the charts. I want to insert a scatter plot. I'm going to pick one that's actually has lines connected. So I'll choose that to start. And if you notice, there's nothing there yet. It's just a blank screen because I haven't added any data yet. So I'm going to choose Select Data. And what I can do now is I can add data sets. So I'm going to add a data set. I'm going to give it a name. Call it Bolt. Now it's asking me what does it want for my X values. Well, I want to create a position time graph, so along the x-axis is going to be time. So I'll come over here and I'll select the time data for Usain Bolt. For my x-axis, the y-axis will be his position. So I'll select the different positions over here. And if you already notice, if you look at, there's already kind of the beginning of a graph being made. So I'll hit OK. Now I have a bunch of different runners, so I can actually select and add more of these. I'm going to again add a new piece of data. I'll add this one for Osafa Powell. Again, the X series is the time values, so I'll select his time values. Again, you might need to move things around to see stuff. For the Y, again, I'll select the position values. There's his data. Okay. I'll add one more on here. You could add all of these by doing the same technique again and again. I'm just going to add one more for now, so I'll add Carl Lewis. Again, X values are his time values. Y values are the position values. And I'll hit OK. And then if I'm done entering data, you can make more data sets, but if I'm done, I'll hit OK. So now my graph is made. It's kind of small, so you can do certain things. You can go to the top and you can click Move Chart, and you can actually make it a sheet by itself. And label it. I'll leave this position time. Hit OK. And now the graph is all by itself on a page. And if you notice, I have my position time data here. I have 3 different color lines. I have Usain Bolt, Osafa Powell, and Carl Lewis. Again, if you want to change some of the options, you could, for example, these different buttons here, change the color of your lines, different color schemes. You could also go to this middle thing that says Chart Layouts, and this kind of changes how the grid lines are lined up, whether you have axes or not. So you can kind of play around, go through these, see one that you like. This one actually has all 3 and has linear curves fit to it. Again, you can scroll down. And if you found that you might like, go back and change the color. Again, if you you should probably put chart titles on these things, so I might want to find one that has a chart title like this. So I have my 3 things. I have some graph grid in the background. I can then go down here, click on the axes. This is my time data, and I'll make sure I include units. In this case, it's in seconds. This is my position data in meters. And I have a nice graph of position versus time for this 100-meter dash. The next thing you want to do is you want to create a velocity versus time graph. So part of this was that we have to use the data we have here and try to calculate some velocities over each section of the run. So I'm going to do one thing. I'm going to change my position variables here because these are going to be average velocities over like 0 to 10 meters and then 10 to 20 meters. I'm going to change these to match that. So I'm going to go 0 to 10, 10 to 20, 20 to 30, and so on. Alright, now my labels have been changed. So I'm going to now use Excel to calculate my average velocities. So I know from class the equation for average velocity is change in position over change in time. I know all the change in positions are all 10 meters for each interval here. The change in time, I know the total time at each point, so I have to create an equation to find the change in time. So what I'm going to do is to enter an equation into Excel. I'm going to collect equals. I'm going to type in my change in position, which I know is going to be 10 for each one. And I'm going to say that my change in time is going to be, I'm going to use parentheses, my current time. So instead of typing in the current time, you've noticed I'm clicking on it, minus my previous time, which again I'm also clicking on. So it's cell B19 minus cell B18, close parentheses. And that gives you my average velocity over that time period. Now what's great about Excel is that I could go down here again and hit equals 10 divided by this cell minus that cell, but I could also, if I click on the corner of this, I can drag this down, and Excel knows, if you look at what's written here now, Excel knows to use these two cells this time. And then if I go here, it knows to use these two cells. So it actually iterates and changes my variables for me, and it uses the cells next to it. I can even go and copy this and paste it over here, and it knows enough to use Usain Bolt's data. So it's using these two cells and knows enough to do that. And then again, I can copy this and I'll paste it to all these. And now I have my data for all these, for Carl Lewis and for Usain Bolt. And this, I'll make sure I label it. This is actually velocity data. And meters per second. My last step is going to be to create another graph using my velocity data. So I'm going to go back up to the top, insert, choose. This time I'm going to choose a line graph instead of a scatter plot, because the scatter plot, because my intervals aren't real numbers, it might get a little confused. So I'm going to choose a line graph. I'm going to choose one that has dots on it that are connected. Again, if you notice this time it's trying to figure out what it wants me to do, so it's graphing all this weird stuff. Well, I don't want it to graph all that, so I'm going to go back to select data, and I'm going to delete all of this because I don't want it to do that. And it gets rid of everything, and I got my blank graph again, which is where I want to be. So what I can do now is I'll add my data sets. Call this one Bolt. Series values. I want the velocities for Usain Bolt, which are right here. It's already starting to graph those. I'll hit OK. Add another data set. This one will be for Carl Lewis. I'll use his, oops, wrong column. His velocity values. Plots his up there. There's one last thing I want to do. I want to actually label the bottom not 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, but 0 to 10, 10 to 20, and so on. So I can edit these category labels here, and I'm going to just drag it across and choose these things. If you notice now on the bottom, instead of doing just 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, it switched it to whatever the labels are over there. Looks good. I'll hit OK. And then again, I want to make this a new chart, so I'll click Move Chart, make it a new sheet. This is my velocity time plot. Again, nice big graph. I can then go up, change colors if I want to. I can go find that template that I liked before. If I can find it. I don't know if that's right. So again, you can find whichever ones you like. You can, again, if you play with this a little more, you can modify stuff. Let's see. I guess I'll choose this one. Is that right? Again, make sure you label your axes. This here is interval. time in meters. Over here it is your velocity in meters per second. And I can even throw a title in here. And of course, because this new version of Excel is so annoying, it doesn't want to let me really move this. There we go. And I'm done.